In this movie, we're going to show step-by-step how to deploy DirectAccess. If you'd like to learn how to deploy DirectAccess and make it highly available, please go to itdvds.com. We go over that process step-by-step, including how to create a public key infrastructure for DirectAccess, how to deploy the necessary certificates for DirectAccess, how to create network load balance clusters for our DirectAccess servers, as well as our network location servers, how to manage clients remotely, and much more. Now we're going to do a very simple DirectAccess deployment. And normally this is not something we'd actually want to do in production. We're just going to do it so we can see how simple it can be. It could work for very small companies. But even in that situation, it's good to deploy it a more advanced way so that if we do need to scale it out and it does need to change, it's all set up. In order to change it after the fact is pretty difficult. So, and the reason that this makes this a simple deployment is that we're not going to use a public key infrastructure or PKI, so we're not going to deploy certificates to the clients. And we're also going to use a wizard that takes care of a lot of the configuration. But when we do this, we lose a lot. We lose support for Windows 7, we lose load balancing, any kind of multi-site deployment, OTP, one-time password, or smart card, use of forced tunneling, and it's a bit less secure because we don't have that certificate on the client that's used for an extra layer of authentication. So instead of using that certificate, it's going to use Kerberos authentication, which is good and is normal, also part of the process in advanced deployment of DirectAccess, but again, we lose that extra layer with the certificates. So here's the diagram of our simple DirectAccess deployment. We've got our internal network here. And our internal network has our DirectAccess server, and our domain controller. Domain controller is also our internal DNS server. Our DirectAccess server, when we deploy it, it's going to be automatically configured as the network location server. And the network location server is pretty important because if our DirectAccess clients can't find the network location server when they're connected to the internal network, then they'll think they're actually outside of the network, and they'll try to connect to DirectAccess. And that will cause a lot of problems with our internal clients accessing internal resources. So it's actually very important and one of the big reasons why we don't want to use this simple deployment. We want to put our network location server on some type of highly available cluster. And the network location server is pretty simple. It's just a website. It doesn't have to do anything. It's just a simple website. So out here on the internet, we've got our external DNS server. And we've got an example of, let's say, somebody's home router and a DirectAccess client that's connected to the internet via a home router. And this could be anything. However, this client's connected to the internet. It's just that they're not connected to the internal network. So when they connect, they're going to connect to what we're going to configure, da.itdvscorp.com. And that's how they're going to connect to our DirectAccess server to create the DirectAccess server connection. And on our firewall here, that's on the edge of our network, we're going to create a NAT, a network address translation, on port 443 for a public IP address that translates to the internal IP address of our DirectAccess server. So that's how our clients are going to connect to our DirectAccess server. And our DirectAccess server is only going to have one NIC. That NIC is going to be configured with an internal IP address. So our DirectAccess server is not going to be directly connected to the internet or anything like that. So again, a very simple deployment. We're not going to have IP version 6 set up on our internal network. Now it does need to be enabled, but we don't have to have IP version 6 routing and all of our clients have IP version 6 addresses or anything like that in order to use DirectAccess. And that goes for this simple DirectAccess deployment as well as an advanced DirectAccess deployment. So even though DirectAccess depends on IP version 6. Again, we don't have to have it set up and deployed on our internal network or anywhere for that matter. We just have to have it enabled. And it needs to be enabled on all of our computers, all of our servers and our clients. And by enabled, what I mean here is if we go to the properties of a network adapter, we can see IP version 6, it's checked here. So that means it's enabled. It's not configured in any special way. It's just enabled. And if we wanted to see if it was enabled on a server core installation, I'll just enter a PS session into my DirectAccess 01 server, which is a server core installation. And we're going to use the get-network adapter, our net adapter binding commandlet, pipe that to format table because I just want to see the name, display name, and enabled. And here we can see IP version 6, enabled is set to true. So that means it is enabled. If this was set to false, so we'd have a problem. We need to go ahead and enable it. So for this simple deployment, we're going to need to add an external DNS record here, and this is going to be for the URL that our DirectAccess clients are going to use to connect to our DirectAccess server. It can be anything. We're going to use da.itdbscorp.com. Now, as far as our internal DNS records go, the wizard, the simple wizard we're going to use in order to set up DirectAccess is going to set those internal DNS records up for us. Now we're going to set up an external DNS record. We're going to use the URL da.itdbscorp.com, and DA stands for Direct Access. We can make this whatever we want, and it does not have to be the same domain as our internal domain. If I'm using an internal domain like itdvds.local or something like that, I can use an external domain. Again, it can be anything I want. I just have to own it, or at least the company has to own it, in order to be able to configure external DNS on it. And external DNS, it's important to know, is different from internal DNS. External DNS is accessible out on the internet. And internal DNS is what we query when we're connected to our internal network. So it's very simple. We're just going to create an A record, and it's going to resolve to the public IP that we want to use for our direct access server. In my case, it's 98.191.119.247. And our external DNS server can be a lot of different things. It can be a bind. It could even be a Windows server, Unix, Linux. It can be all sorts of things. It can even be managed by our domain registrar. This one is managed by GoDaddy. So I can just go to their website to configure the external DNS. It makes it very easy. So we're going to scroll down here. And again, it's going to be different depending on what we're using for external DNS. I'm going to click on Add. And I'm going to create an A record. It's going to be, the host is going to be DA, and it appends the domain I'm working with to the end of it. So it appends itdbscorp.com. So the fully qualified domain name is going to be da.itdbscorp.com. And it's going to point to the IP address 98.191.119.247. TTL, time to live, we can make it whatever works for us. I'm going to do it a half an hour. TTL is basically how long this record is cached for on caching naming servers. So the longer we set it for, the longer it's cached. So if we set it for something long, like a week, and then we want to go in and change it, well, the old IP address could be cached for a week. So we might not see changes for a week. So normally setting it that long is not a good idea. I'm going to set it short, so if I need to change it, that's fine. I'll go ahead and click Save. Then if I change it, I only have to wait a half an hour for all the caching name servers to re-contact this DNS server to get the record. So there it is, ADA 98.191.119.247. So it may take a little bit. It shouldn't take long, though. But we should be able to ping this from the internet now and get this address back. Now, if we test it out and try to ping da.itdbscorp.com from a computer that's connected to our internal network, well, then it's going to query our internal DNS server for that record, and it won't be there, so it'll come back unresolved. So we either want to ping it from a computer that's connected to the internet out there somewhere, or from our internal network. There are a lot of different websites we can go to that can help us resolve our names. So we can go to like dnsstuff.com. We can go to what they call the toolbox. And there's lots of sorts of good tools on here for lookups. I can type in da.itdbscorp.com. And I can see the lookup succeeded. I can scroll down. I can see the name server. And I can see what it resolves to. So this should be what we want it to be and what we set up in external DNS. If it's not, well, then we got a problem. Either DNS hasn't propagated out yet in your environment, or there's something we need to fix, because this has to resolve to that external IP address that we want to use for our direct access server. If it doesn't, then direct access is not going to work. If you want to learn more about the ins and outs and all the advanced configurations and setups with DNS, please see the Windows Server 2016 Administration Training, DNS, DHCP, and IPAN training on itdvds.com. We really go into it in depth. Next, we're going to create a NAT on our firewall so that when our direct access client tries to contact da.itdbscorp.com, it hits the external IP address, 98.191.119.247. Our firewall then translates that to the internal IP address of our direct access server, which is 192.168.7.247, and it's going to be on port 443. So here I am on my firewall router. Now this is going to be a Windows system. Normally it would probably be some sort of Cisco device or some sort of firewall device. Could even be a device that's supplied by your ISP. Whatever it is, the concept's the same. We're setting up a NAT, network address translation. If you only have one external IP address, then it could also be called port forwarding you need to set up for port 443. But normally we'll have multiple public IP addresses that will be on our external NIC that's on our firewall device. So let's go to Tools. In our example, we're going to Routing and Remote Access. So again, we're on this device, which is on the edge of our network. That basically connects us to the internet. And for mine, I'm going to right-click on my external adapter. Let's go to Properties. And I can see the addresses that are on that particular external network adapter. We're going to go to Services and Ports. Let's go ahead and click Add. This is where we're going to create a NAT on a Windows device. We'll just give it a description. I'm going to call it Direct Access. I'm going to use it on this external IP address. And the external IP address is 98.191.119.247. So I'll go ahead and type that in. It's going to be TCP, incoming ports 443. The private IP address is going to be the IP address of my direct access server, which is going to be 192.168.7.247. And outgoing port is port 443 as well. All right, our NAT is all set up. Now let's create a group in Active Directory for our direct access clients. I'm going to go to Tools, and let's go to Active Directory Users and Computers. And I've got an OU here called Groups where I create most of my groups. So I'm just going to right click on it. Let's go to New, Group. And I'm going to call this group Direct Access Clients. I'll leave it at Global and Security. Click OK. Now this group is what we're going to use to determine which clients are actually direct access clients. Technically, we don't have to use this group. By default, and we'll see this, it uses a WMI filter so that any computers that have a mobile processor will be direct access clients. That's certainly one way to do it. Using a group gives us a bit more control over who or really what is a direct access client, because direct access clients are done by computer. They're not done per user. So let's go to Members, and I'm going to add the computers that I want to be direct access clients. Let's go up here to Object Types, and we just want computers. Again, because we're doing it by computer, not by user. So let's go to Advanced here, and maybe all the computers I want start with desktop. So I'm going to add desktop 122. Again, these are the computers that I want to be direct access clients. Desktop 205 and 221. So I'll go ahead and click OK, and click OK. And we'll see when we configure it, this group or any members of this group will have the group policy object apply to them that makes them direct access clients. Now let's install the direct access role on our direct access server, which is DirectAccess 01. And this is a server core installation, so it does not have a GUI on it. GUI meaning graphical user interface. So there are a couple different ways we can do this remotely. We can do this with a server manager, or we can do it with PowerShell. And if you want to learn more about how to administer a server core installation remotely, please see the Windows Server 2016 administration training on itdvds.com, particularly the remotely administering Windows Server 2016 core with Server Manager, PowerShell, computer management, and also installing the remote server administration tools on Windows 10. So I've got the remote server administration tools installed on this Windows 10 machine. And if I go into Server Manager, All Servers, I can right-click, Add a Server. And I'm going to type in DirectAccess 01. Let's go ahead and find it. And we'll add it. And now I can right-click on it, Add Roles and Features. Let's expand that out. Let's go ahead and click Next. It's going to be role-based. My server's selected that I want to configure. And we're looking for remote access. So I'd want to check that box. Click Next. Next again. Next again, and the role service we want is Direct Access and VPN. And click on Add Features. Click Next. Next again, and Install. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it remotely is with PowerShell. So I'll just open up a PowerShell prompt as an administrator. And if I wanted to, I could enter a PS session into DirectAccess 01, or from here I can just use the command install-windows feature. I'm going to run it against DirectAccess 01, and then minus name. This is the name of the feature we want to install, DirectAccess-VPN, and we're going to include the management tools, and most likely we'll have to restart. So adding this restart option will restart the computer if necessary. So go ahead and hit enter. So that's pretty quick as opposed to going through Server Manager. Either way gets the same thing done. Okay, the role's been installed and the restart has completed. Now we need to configure DirectAccess. So I've got my remote administration tools installed in Windows 10 here, Server Manager, all servers. I've connected to DirectAccess 01. Now I'm going to right click on it, go down, and let's click on Remote Access Management. So let's go up here and click on Direct Access and VPN. And we're going to get this remote access setup wizard options if we haven't configured direct access yet. So running the getting started wizard, this is the simple deployment that we're going to do. Run the remote access setup wizard. This is the more advanced deployment. So I'm going to click on run the getting started wizard. And we want to deploy direct access only. We could deploy direct access and VPN, but normally we want to just deploy direct access on a specific server. If we're going to do VPN also, we want to deploy VPN on another server. And one of the main reasons for that is because if we have VPN on there also, it does not let us use what's called null encryption for IP HTTPS connections, which is how our direct access clients are going to connect. And that means a lot of traffic will be double encrypted, which will actually slow down client's user experience and use more resources on our direct access server. So I'll go ahead and click on direct access only. And we've got a couple different topologies we could have used. We could have used edge, which means that our direct access server is on the edge of the network, has one NIC that actually has a public IP address on it, and another NIC that has an internal IP address. Could have been behind an edge device with two network adapters. This is going to be if you're behind a transparent firewall, so you're still behind a firewall, but one NIC on your direct access server is still able to have a public IP address and the other would have an internal IP address. And then what we're going to do behind an edge device that's using NAT, network address translation, and it's going to have a single network adapter. And down here we're going to type in the public name. We could use an IP address, but we want to use a name for the clients that are going to connect to our remote access server. And that's going to be the external DNS record we set up. So in my case, it's da.itdbscorp.com. So I'll go ahead and click Next. And we could click Finish at this point, and that would be it. We can go up here and possibly modify a few settings if we want to, or at least see how things are configured. We've got our GPO settings. These are the group policy objects that are going to be created. We can see the name they're going to be created with. We've got one for client settings and another one for server settings. I'll just leave that at the default. We've also got our remote clients settings here. And this is something we will change. So this is who the group policy for our clients is going to apply to. By default, it's all domain computers, and it's then filtered down by that WMI filter that looks for only computers with mobile processors. And if we leave this checked, that's what it does. It adds that WMI filter, enable direct access for mobile computers only. So what we're actually going to do is add the group we created earlier, our direct access clients, and we're going to remove domain computers. And we're also going to uncheck this enable direct access for mobile computers only. What this will do is now any computer accounts that are added to direct access clients group will then have this group policy object applied, which will make them direct access clients. So I'll go ahead and click Next. We could also add other resources that validate connectivity to the internal network. It's actually going to create one for us, so we don't need to add anything else. A help desk email address. This is actually important to add, so I'm going to add support@itdbscorp.com. And without this email, it's actually not possible to collect diagnostic logs on the client. Another option here, allow direct access clients to use local name resolution. This allows them to kind of disable direct access and just use their internet connection for pretty much everything. They will still be connected via direct access. So if we wanted to manage that client remotely, we still could, but from their point of view, it'll look as though that they're not connected to the internal network. So this is if we want to allow them to do that or not. I'll just leave it unchecked. Now let's go ahead and scroll down. Look at the other options here, remote access server. So this is our topology and our name. So if we wanted to change that, we could. You can see the adapter it's selected for us. It's the only adapter on our direct access server, so that's the correct one. And here, if we had a SSL certificate that we wanted to use, we could select it here. Otherwise, we're going to use a self-signed certificate. Since we don't have a public key infrastructure, we're going to use the self-signed one. We could get an SSL certificate from a third-party certificate authority like Thought, VeriSign, or GoDaddy. In that case, we could add it here. Let's go ahead and click Finish. And our infrastructure servers. This actually has to do with our name resolution policy table. And that decides if we're trying to resolve a domain name, whether or not we're going to use our internal DNS servers on our network or the internet DNS servers that are configured if our client is just connected to the internet, or whatever DNS servers the client is configured for when it grabs an IP address, normally via DHCP. So if this is blank, then it's going to use that, whatever the client has configured via DHCP. If there's a DNS server address listed, then it's going to use that DNS server. And it's going to use the direct access tunnel in order to resolve it. So you'll notice this IP address is our direct access server. We might think, well, that's not a DNS server. Well, it actually uses that DNS 6 to 4 in order to translate IP version 4 addresses into IP version 6 addresses, because IP version 6 is what direct access uses. So that's what makes it possible, even though we're only using IP version 4 on our internal network. And it added da.corp, or da.itvscorp.com, because we don't want that to resolve internally. We want it to resolve externally. And it had to add that because otherwise it would try to resolve it internally, because we have this name suffix here, itvscorp.com. So anything like dc01.itvscorp.com, it's going to try to use our direct access server in order to resolve that name. And again, we don't want that with our external public DNS entry that we added so that our direct access client can contact our direct access server over the internet. And we'll get into name resolution policy tables more in the advanced configuration. And this is the URL that it sets up for our network location server that's actually going to be on our direct access server. So that's all the settings. Everything looks good. I'll go ahead and click OK and finish. Okay, the configuration was applied successfully with warnings. If we want, we can scroll up here. We can see the warning, and the warning we got was the NRPT entry for the DNS suffix itvscorp.com contains the public name, our da.itvscorp.com. The exemption was added automatically already to the NRPT table, so we're good to go there. We can also right-click on here and do copy script if we wanted to, and copy this, everything that it executed with PowerShell. So we can actually view it. I'll just paste it into Notepad and see all the commandlets it ran in order to install direct access and configure it. So that's actually it. Direct access is set up. Now let's take a look at the group policy objects that were created. Let's go to Tools, our Group Policy Management. And we'll just expand this out, expand out our domains. And I'll scroll down here to Group Policy Objects. So up here you can see I've got a lot of group policy objects, but these were the two that were created. Direct access client settings and direct access server settings. So we can see it's linked at the domain, but it's filtered. The server settings, it only applies to the computer direct access 01, which is our direct access server. The client settings, it's linked at the domain, but it's filtered by our direct access clients group. So any computer we add to this group will automatically have this particular policy applied to it. So this makes it very easy. If we want to add a client or make a client a direct access client, then we just add the computer account to this group in Active Directory. If If we want to remove it, we just remove the computer account. And we can take a look at what these group policy objects actually do. So for our client settings, if we go over to settings here, it can generate a report for us, show us exactly what it's doing to our clients. So we can see there's some security settings, public key trusted root certification authorities. So it's basically adding the certificate for da.itvscorp.com. This is because it's a self-signed certificate, so it's not automatically trusted. What this does is it makes it trusted by our direct access clients. Same goes for our network location server. And it created a bunch of firewall rules and settings to make direct access work. So we can see there are quite a few of them. And also it configured our name resolution policy table. So now direct access isn't going to happen immediately. These group policy objects have to apply in order for it to work. So first we'd probably want to take a look at our server and make sure this group policy object has applied to our server. And if we wanted, we could do that. We could enter a PS session into DirectAccess 01. And we can use the command gp result /r. And this is a great command when we're working with group policy. And we can see the applied group policy objects, and the direct access server settings has been applied to this computer, which is our direct access server. So that one's good to go. Next, we probably want to take a look at one of our clients. So I'll go ahead and exit out, and this computer just happens to be a client that we added, desktop 205, to that security group in Active Directory users and computers. If we take a look at it, there it is, desktop 205. So we can run the same command and see if the client version of the group policy object has been applied. And I can see, okay, it has not yet. So there are multiple ways we can apply it. One, we can just wait and it'll apply automatically over time. Or we can use the gp update /force. And I can see the computer policy applied successfully and the user policy. And now if I wanted to, I could use a gp result /r to make sure everything's working the way it's supposed to. And I could see, okay, well, it wasn't applied yet. And the beauty of this particular command, it says the following GPOs were not applied because they were filtered out. And here's my direct access client settings. We can see the filtering, it was denied or it was filtered out. And I can go and see this computer is part of these certain groups. And I don't see my direct access client group yet. So it doesn't know it's a member of it yet. So I might have run that gp update command and thought, okay, the policy's applied, I'm good to go, but it's good to check and see if it's actually applied. So I'm going to go ahead and reboot this computer. Okay, I've gone ahead and rebooted the computer. Let's go ahead and open up a PowerShell prompt. Run our gp result /r. And we can scroll up to see now it's been applied, direct access client settings, because it knows it's part of the direct access clients group now. Another command we can run to check if the settings did apply. I mean, they did, because we can see the group policy object ran against this particular computer. But we can use the get-dns client nrpt policy. This will show us our name resolution policy table. And then we can see the entries for directaccess-nls.itvscorp.com as well as da.itvscorp.com and itvscorp.com. And you'll notice for direct access DNS server for itvscorp.com, it's using this IP version 6 address, which is the IP version 6 address that our direct access server is using for our DNS 6-4. So this client is good to go. We can actually remove it from this network, put it somewhere out there on the internet, and it will connect to our direct access server seamlessly, and it will look as though the computer is still connected to our internal network. And we can verify that we've done it without a PKI, a public key infrastructure. If I just right click here, let's go to run, let's launch an MMC. Click yes. And let's add remove snap-in. Let's add our certificates. It's going to be for our computer account and the local computer. Let's go ahead and click OK. We'll just expand this out, expand out personal, and there's nothing in there. So we don't have any computer certificates. We can also confirm this here by opening up our Windows firewall with advanced security and expand out monitoring, expand out security associations, and click on main mode. And we can see our tunnels here. So the first authentication method is for the computer, it's using Kerberos, and the second is using Kerberos also for the user. So that's really it for a simple direct access deployment. And we can see it's fairly easy to deploy without kind of any special network infrastructure design changes needed. So let's do that. Let's take this computer. Right now I'm just going to run the NetSH DNS client, show state commandlet, and we can see the machine location. Right now it's inside the corporate network. Let's move it outside of our corporate network. Okay, I've gone ahead and done that. Now our computer is over here. It's just connected to a home router here. Just connect to the internet. And if we run that NetSH DNS client show state command again, we can see the location is outside the corporate network. And it determines that and whether or not it can contact the network location server. And I can just do an IP config. We can see our IP address, 172.16.1.50. And you also notice I've got an IP HTTPS interface now, and that has an IP address because that's what I'm using to actually connect to my direct access server. So I should, even though I'm outside of the network, I should be able to ping like dc01.ituvescorp.com, and I can. And you notice it uses the IP version 6 address, which it doesn't have, but that's being translated by our DNS 6-4, which is what makes it so that even though I don't have IP version 6 set up on my network, it's still able to communicate with it. So pretty cool. Now I can access resources on my network. I could, like DC01, the C drive if I want to access it. It's basically just like I'm on my corporate network. So very cool. And it all happens behind the scenes. There's nothing I need to set up or configure or connect like a VPN. It's just always connected. Whenever I'm connected to the internet, I'm connected to my internal corporate network. And all the traffic that goes to my internal network is encrypted through IPsec tunnels that travel through the internet and to our direct access server.